We are live and streaming on Facebook here. Welcome everybody who's joining us live. We're so excited to have you, and we're so excited to have our next guests. So this is episode number 13 of the Leader Equation. I am Lindsay Soprani, CEO of Soprani Consulting and the Lindsay Soprani team. We're the top recruiting and consulting firm in the country for all things real estate. And I'm here with my lovely co-host, Miss Christy Belt-Grossman, who is the CEO and owner of Ops Boss Coaching, the ultimate resource for training and coaching for real estate ops bosses. And welcome to the Leader Equation. So today we have really special guests. We have Skye and Eliza Michiels from the Real Estate with Heart, and that's powered by Compass. And we are excited to have them because they are a brother and sister team. And we have so many questions for them about working with family. Before we do that, I just want to take 2 seconds and have you guys both introduce yourselves on how you came into, the real estate space. Just give us 2 seconds. I know that you guys have been in business together for 6.5 years now, so that's awesome. So we'll have you give just an introduction of who you are, and then we'll shoot it over to Christy, and she'll take us through the quick-fire questions.
Cool. I guess I'll start. So my name is Skye Michiels. I'm currently the sales manager for Compass in Center City, Philadelphia. I got into real estate in 2002 just as a little side gig as part of my teaching career, went full-time in 2005, and then launched my team in 2013. And I've been at Compass now for the last about 15 months now, since August. So.
Eliza Michiels. I got into real estate 6.5 years ago when I moved here to join Skye on his team, and I am a full-time agent. And since we've moved to Compass, have taken over managing the Real Estate with Heart team.
Awesome, love that. I have so many questions for you guys because I was on a brother-sister team for 23 years myself, and I now work with my husband. So this is going to be really fun. So before we get into the meat of everything, we're going to take you through the quick fire really fast, just so people can get to know you. So you guys have already taken us through how many years in business. What was the sales volume of your team year one, and what do you project it to be this year?
So I launched the team in 2013. That year we did about 25 million in volume. This past year in 2019,
we're around 70 million. We're tracking
awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And how many people on the team year one, and how many people now?
Year one, it was myself, 2 admin, and about 3 agents by the end of the first year, we'll say.
Yeah, and now we're 9 agents, including myself, and 3 full-time staff.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And then Skye, you're also leading, you're in a leadership role with Compass. So how many people are you leading on the Compass side?
Under my responsibility, I have about 200 total agents and around 50 what we call principal agents or team leaders. So,
awesome. Yeah. I love this. You've got feet into businesses kind of.
Yeah, and I've given up a lot of the role of, I was going to say, yeah, let's be real. My Real Estate with Heart business is now being run by Eliza, Liz, and the rest of the Real Estate with Heart team. It's an amazing collective group of women who are unbelievably powerful and strong, and are running their own team now with Real Estate with Heart as I'm, stepped into this role at Compass.
I love that. I want to dig into that too. I have lots of questions about that. So people always want to know, when people are successful, what do you do to start your day right? What's your morning routine? Who wants to take that question?
I'm a little more the morning person than Eliza, so I'll take that one. And along with Jake Dreyfus, one of my best friends, we created a group called the 5 a.m.ers. November, full disclosure, has been horrible 5 a.m. So when I'm on my game, I wake up at 5 a.m. and I have a series of sort of life things that I like to do: work out, read, meditate, stretch, whatever it might be. I have a little routine, and the routine switches up depending upon the month, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish goal-wise. But the real key is that one thing of waking up at 5 a.m. For me is the most critical thing. If I do that, everything else sort of falls into place. When I don't do that, my morning routine is sort of,
fizzles out. And we'll post the link for that group in the comments as well. That's an awesome group. I refer people that I coach to that group all the time. Even though I don't get up, full disclosure, I am not a 5 a.m.er either. But I do have a morning routine.
No shame.
There we go, no shame. And Eliza, what are your keys to success for preparing for tomorrow?
Yeah, I think at my best, towards the end of the day, I'm looking at what's coming up the next day, just kind of making sure I'm prepared mentally for what's on my calendar. And then I'd say sort of like my wellness practice around it. I am pretty regular with like I'll make some hot tea, not always in the summertime, but I'll kind of have like a cup of tea that I bring to bed. And usually I'll sit for like 5 minutes of meditation before I get into bed. And then I'll read for a little bit.
I love that.
Kind of a like, yeah, like kind of brings me down, and then I sleep really soundly. And as I remind Skye, sleep is an incredibly important part of wellness and success.
Totally agree with that.
Overrated.
Details. I actually met somebody the other day that sleeps 3 hours a day and is probably the most alert person I've ever met in my entire life. So there are some unusual people out there. Okay, so what book has impacted you the most?
For me, I mean, tons of books, but probably my favorite right now is Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. I believe everyone should read it personally, but really anyone that is in a position of leadership or in any organization, frankly, should read this because of the fact that leadership occurs up and down. One of his lines, it occurs up and down the chain of command. And the biggest lesson of that book is owning your life. At the end of the day, it is all goes back to your responsibility. Everything is your responsibility.
So have you made any changes in your life as a result of reading that?
The biggest change is mindset, in the sense that no matter what happens, is not from me, this is from Jocko. Anything that happens, you always look at it as using the word good, and you insert the word good, and you find what the opportunity is. So something, my cell phone broke, good. Gives me enough time to upgrade my technology.
Oh man, that's perfect timing. I'm literally getting a new phone this week.
There you go.
One of the best little videos too. I'll stick that in the comments too. His good video. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
Eliza, what about for you? Do you have a favorite book that's impacted you the most?
So I was thinking that I would say generally I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown. Dare to Lead, I think, is her most current one. I really just love her approach and kind of frankness around vulnerability, and in particular with Dare to Lead, and I think she's like kind of tuned into this as she's progressed in her writing and speaking, is really getting clear on the difference of vulnerability and disclosure. Vulnerability is not just over disclosure, but to me that connection through vulnerability is so important, and I think is really what brings meaning to me in my life and doing my work. And then another one that I'm kind of currently really into right now is just Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth. We've come back to that, and appreciate sort of just the check on ego in kind of that style of book. I think it's so helpful in kind of keeping things in perspective and kind of showing up. Yeah.
Oh man, his stuff is like so profoundly simple and deep at the same time. Yeah. That's like a whole nother podcast. Okay. So, superpower. Are you going to tell us your own superpower or the other person's superpower?
Oh gosh.
We could do either one. Which you prefer, Kirsten?
How about you tell me the other ones? Eliza's superpower.
Eliza's superpower is determination. When she puts her mind to something, there is nothing that will stop her.
Thank you.
Love that. All right, give us Skye's superpower.
I would say energy. The amount of things that this man does, so energy, and then that just got trumped in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, positivity. I mean, the amount of things that he does and the positivity that he shows up into life with. I mean, I don't know anybody that has been able to just like take blows and see the good, right? I mean, it's so fitting that you highlighted that about Jocko, because that you embody that, and always focus on the positive, always moving forward, and then a super high capacity to just juggle a million things.
So let me just ask a question around that, and then I'm going to ask one more question of you, Skye, and throw it back to Lindsay. Positivity, I love that too. And we're talking about leadership on the leader equation. So how does that come across with the people that you're leading when you're always positive? Does it rub them the wrong way of, oh, he's like Pollyanna, he's going to find something, or does it pump them up? Where's the fine line there?
Awesome. A really amazing question. And I think Eliza probably can comment on this too. You have to learn when you're in a leadership position, number one, positivity has to be authentic. If it's fake positive, right, it's almost like a double negative. It almost does the reverse. That's number one. So if you're not feeling positive, don't go out there and be like, hey, great news, everyone. Like we lost that deal. This is awesome. No, be like, hey, this fucking sucks. And lead always with authenticity within your positivity. The second thing is that you have to be knowledgeable and aware of the, number one, the audience that you're dealing with and how they receive positivity. And then number two, the timing of it. There are moments when, and I'm an ultra positive person.
Yeah.
And a skill I've had to develop, this is not something that is like natural. It's something I've failed at over and over and over because sometimes positivity can rub people the wrong way. Sometimes you have to know when there's moments of just being in the moment. And sometimes that moment sucks. And you got to be in that moment and be like, this sucks. And create that empathy and connection. And as the suck, so to speak, ebbs, and as the emotion ebbs, and then sort of the baseline begins, that's when you can start to insert positivity again. But you have to, if there's something that really is going wrong and you come in and you're like, yeah,
where's the good? Where's the good? You're like,
there's gotta be good. There's gotta be good. This is awesome. This is awesome. Look how happy I am. I know you're miserable. I'm happy. You will lose people like that. And so it's a skill. It's a really great question, and it's a lifelong thing. I mean, when you're often it can be really misinterpreted often as either lack of connection. So ironically, positivity can be perceived as a lack of connection. Like you don't understand what I'm going through.
Lack of compassion.
Yeah, and this is as running my team. I'm sure my team members can comment on this, and I'm sure now my agents can comment on this. Like,
now they're all going to call you Pollyanna when you come back to the office.
Exactly.
But it's not a Pollyanna. That's the thing, and it's a really appropriate question. And I think maybe to your point, the acknowledgement of the challenge, along with it's like hope, right? So it's not the like. To me, Pollyanna is almost thinking the like. Everything's great, and I'm like kind of glossing over the fact that things aren't. But to me, the experience with you is it's the like, right, like okay, this is hard, but it's like that beacon of hope that like it's gonna be okay, we're gonna get there. And sometimes when you're struggling and having a challenging moment, like you kind of need to have someone else to like show that way, and then you can kind of pull on their coattail, like get on that path yourself.
Yeah, love that.
Great question for anyone out there. A really great question to ask is, what do you need from me right now? And listen to the answer. Don't have the answer already formed in your mind, Right. But you ask the question, what do you need from me right now? And then the respondent will say, I need you just to be quiet. Great. That's what I am. I need positivity, right? I need to be uplifted. Great, let's go. Let's, whatever it might be.
Listen.
You got it. The power is in the question, though, and that question, what do you need from me right now, is a really, really powerful question to internalize and even write down if you're a leader out there.
That's fantastic.
I would say sometimes for yourself too, of like, what do I need from myself right now or for myself? I think that's a really good one to continue to be self-aware, especially as a leader, because you can't and shouldn't or maybe won't get it from your team. Like that's not their role. So being really clear on what you need so that then you can also go and find that outside of your team.
Yeah.
Love that. Lindsay, I'm going to throw it back to you because I know we have a million questions. So for those who are joining us for the first time on the Leader Equation, we're talking with entrepreneurs, they're leaders, they're shotgun leaders. What adds, subtracts, multiplies, and divides our results. And of course, we're looking to multiply our success. So Linz, let's dive into the real meat.
Yeah, well, so, obviously brother and sister, a lot of people want to know, what made you decide to go into business together? Like, did you complement each other? And it was like, okay, we're going to do this. How did that happen?
Want me to take that? So I had a corporate career before this. I decided to take about a year and a half off. I was hitting the point of looking to move back east. My mom mentioned to me that Skye's assistant had given her notice, and I said, oh, that's interesting because Philly's one of the cities I'm considering. And the next morning I had a call from Skye, when are you coming to work for me? My mom was all over it. She was like, get her home. And really it was just a unique opportunity for us both. Frankly, I have a business degree. He was at the stage of wanting to build a team. He had an agent and a couple assistants already. I was looking for kind of a soft landing coming back into the working world, and an opportunity to learn and grow, in business. So I had this chance to kind of implement my new degree in, small business.
Right. Yeah. Well, and so we know this, but the audience doesn't yet, but let's kind of dive into how did that go in the beginning? Because you had this great career, all of a sudden you're an assistant. What did that look like for you?
Yeah. And actually, another part of this that I just remembered. So here, there have been some moments of swallowing pride, right? For sure. I'm super grateful. I mean, any of his assistants, I think, it's not like he has this demeaning tenor, but just sometimes when, the tasks that need to be done, I'm like, yes, I'm going to schedule this appointment for you. Like that.
I'm going to print this flyer.
Yeah. And on the flip side, yeah, I had a couple of those moments, like, you do it. I remember saying, I bet you look forward to the day you can ask your assistant to do something and not be worried about flack you're going to get back. Because of course there's a very outspoken right out of the gate, no fear there. But the other thing that's been interesting is Skye, when I moved here, Skye was already very established in the real estate industry. And so for me, I came from having my own professional identity to being Skye's sister. I felt like I was in high school again. And it still happens, and I'm super grateful for that association, and I just embrace it. I'm really proud of all that he's done. But I have those moments of like, oh yeah, in another world, nobody even knew who Skye was. I was Eliza Michiels on my own TV, regardless of that. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. I remember going through that in my business too, because I was in a family business where my mom built the business, and then my brother and I took over the business. So I was always Gail's daughter, Terry's sister, never Christy. Lindsay, yeah. I bet Steve feels that way too.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately.
On the Lindsay Granny team.
Right.
I think, again, kind of coming back to some of that ego stuff, like not taking yourself too seriously. And again, to me, I just embrace it. When I get introduced to Skye's sister, it's like, you know what, thank you, because you are wanting to connect with me through that. That's a great opportunity for me. And it doesn't diminish the fact that I have all these other traits that other people know me individually for, and I don't need to make it clear, even though maybe I'm, relaying that I think about it. It's fine. You can just roll with it and don't hold it too tightly.
From my perspective, obviously, I got very, very lucky at that stage in my team career because of the fact that, I, at a very early spot of running my team, I brought on an admin with an MBA who I trusted with my life. Yeah. I mean, how many people can say that? So what Eliza did for my business was really dig in. I've been selling real estate for a long time, had just launched the team. And as you guys know from being in the real estate business, anyone out there listening who's in real estate, selling real estate as an individual, and even if you have an admin as an individual, and then moving into a team model are two very different things. Where it's two very different skill sets that you're acquiring, and having someone who had a skill set for business like Eliza, but then also who could also challenge me, like my sister, really enabled us to be, from the very, very beginning, create systems that we still to this day, frankly, we still use a lot of systems we created 6 years ago. Yeah. And that was a really powerful key to the success that the team has seen in the years since.
So I want to dig into that. So one thing that you just said was valuable to you is that she could challenge you because you have that trust level that's built already before you went into business together. What does that look like when she challenges you? Like, tell me what that looks like, because I think a lot of rainmakers want someone alongside them to challenge them. And people who haven't had that family relationship to build the trust have to get to that point. So how would they get there? And then what does it look like?
Luckily, I had a lot of years of knowledge of who Eliza was. So typically the moment would come, I'd be running like a bull in a china shop, just doing my thing, running hard, just saying, yeah, just do it. And then typically the moment it would be one of two things, either sort of like a silence that I'd be like, okay, there's something going on. Or I hope you're okay with me saying this, or tears.
I'm totally fine with that.
One of those two, depending upon the severity of the issue and the current moment. And so that for me was always that trigger of like, okay, like I got to pause. All right, let's talk about this. What's going on? You disagree with this? I think the positive is Eliza always was able to check her ego enough that she knew she would give her opinion. At the end of the day, I would make my decision based on what I felt was right, but I would listen to input, not just from her, but also team members, and things along those lines as well. Other admin that we had, our entire team operated where I truly valued input because of the fact that for me, and this is once again a Jocko thing, but you always got to check your ego. If you don't check your ego, Compass, one of our principles that we operate by is collaborate without ego.
Right.
And it's funny because even though that's a current principle, that's a principle we operated with well before Compass. When Compass came to town and we evaluated, we were like, oh, wait, we already created Compass in our team, and that collaborate without ego is a really strong thing for any healthy organization.
Well, and how do you do that? Like Eliza, talk to that, because, I think a lot of times, especially like an operations minded person, that personality can get shut down really fast by not being heard is what they're going to see it as. Right. But, again, Skye said, like, I'm going to take your ideas. I may not go with that. I'm still going to make my decision. How do you check your ego on that, Eliza? Because a lot of people can't.
Yeah. I think there were moments that it was sometimes hard, right? I'd have a strong opinion on something, or he would be doing something, or maybe even there were times that he made a decision that I had no input on, it was something that I wasn't involved in. And it was a moment of realization of like, all right, this is not my company. I have extreme privilege in the access to information and leadership and support and all of that. And at the end of the day, it's not mine. And, there's benefits to that too, right? At the end of the day, I wasn't making payroll. That was not mine either. And so keeping that in balance of like, if I want this to be my company, then that's also a different level of responsibility that I'm not currently handling either. So I think keeping perspective on that of like the good and the bad of not fully being in control. And I think just the deep knowing how much he respects me, I think is a big part of it. And obviously we are at an advantage in having a really good family relationship from that. But I can even think of my current, Liz, who runs the team with me. We have such tremendous respect for each other that challenging the other person, it doesn't hurt the relationship, because like we know that foundation is so solid. Like, I believe in you, I think you're great. And like on this thing, I disagree. And, and like we have to figure out how to like go through it. But that foundation is so critical.
And I think with my current team leaders that I coach and help mentor and everything along those lines, what I always try to preach to them is always make sure that other person understands the why behind your reasoning, your understanding, or your question. So if I'm working with a team leader currently, and then this is one of our passions here at Compass is building teams. If you are making a decision, I want you to explain to me what's the why behind that. Because if you can't explain to me what the why is, your team, you can't explain that to your team. If your team doesn't understand the why behind a decision or direction you're moving in, whatever it might be, at that point, you're going to have fractures within your structure and your organization. And this is not the Simon Sinek why. This is the why just beyond minuscule. Hey, we're making the decision because of the fact that this is going to allow me to free up time to coach you better, as an example. or whatever it might be.
So have you had moments where you're running so fast that you don't have time or haven't taken the time to explain the why, or did you always explain the why? Because I hear people struggle with this all the time, especially when they're first in business together.
This is a daily struggle, right? I mean, especially what we're building here, we are running really fast, and it's always a constant. Sometimes you're running so fast that decisions are made or things are happening, and in your mind why, but you don't convey that properly. And like I said, this is a daily struggle for me in my current role, but also on the team as well, I would say. When I was running the team.
And that's, I would say communication, this is not revolutionary, right? Like communication in leadership is so critical. And part of that communication though is knowing what and when, right? So there's some things that to be communicating, it's just going to slow things down. It's going to be not beneficial to include, if you include everyone on every little nitty gritty thing, then it's like, why are you there? Like you're making me do your job, or you're including me in the blow by blow. So I think really having that judgment of like when those times and what's that frequency and how do you keep people in along the way, and people having the confidence and security to ask questions if they feel like they need more information that they haven't gotten, right? So maybe things did go, and then they can kind of like do the like, whoa, wait, what's happening? I don't understand what's happening, and can speak up and ask for that when that's needed too. And you've always been so open and so willing to, have a conversation or entertain, I think, I'll say criticism or critique and opinions, which is.
Well, and I think there's a term I use from the book we talked about from the very beginning, which is leadership happens up and down the chain of command, meaning leadership is not, if it's only top down, that's a weak organization. The strength of an organization happens from the top down, but mainly from the bottom up.
Right.
And at the end of the day, I'm only as strong as the agents I'm coaching or helping. Not just the principal agents, but all the agents. I'm only as strong. We just recently, inspired by you, Christy, did an admin retreat day where we had 60 admin. Lindsay came in and coached. We had a panel discussion. It was an unbelievable event. And the changes we're seeing just from that one day are immense. In one day, now we have admin collaborating and once again, learning the structure of how do I go and communicate with my team leader. And team leaders often have never been taught how to do this, right? In real estate, often what happens is you get so busy, you're like, I need help. Let me bring on this agent to help me show properties. Right. Let me bring on this other agent. Let me bring on this admin. Now I'm overwhelmed. And you're still running as an agent. No one ever teaches you how to really manage and lead and coach agents and admin. And it's a learned skill. It's not something that comes naturally.
Well, and you guys, something that we kind of chatted about before we went live that I want to make sure that we talk through, that with regard to the learned skill, like you guys said that you don't ever use the you gun. And I would love for you to talk about that, because I really think like, you guys have learned not only how to work together, but how to work with your team, and your team feels comfortable enough to come to you, which means that you've been vulnerable enough as a leader to allow that, right? I mean, it's hard as a leader to take criticism and to allow that feedback, but it's so needed. And so, I'm sure the you gun is a part of that. So
yeah.
Do that.
I got that term from a friend. I don't know, she probably got it from somewhere else too, but it's really just this idea of, when you're in a disagreement or you're feeling frustrated or whatever, I call it the you gun of like, you did this or you made me feel that way. And really being clear in owning, your own, whether it's feelings or responsibility. So, I feel frustrated.
Right.
Which, if I say you made me frustrated, it immediately goes to defense. Like, I didn't make you frustrated, right? And so I think it's just really keeping constructive communication in how you're engaging around challenging topics. And at the end of the day, we really only truly have our own experience, our own perspective from it. And so I can tell you what I feel. I can't tell you what you feel or what you did. And you certainly didn't make me anything. It's at the end, it's back to that extreme ownership. It's kind of an aspect of that, right? Yeah. Of I'm responsible for this. And So I have to bring it up or share it or kind of be aware of what aspects I've contributed. And I think it allows both people, when both people come to the table that way, it's easy to engage that way. If you have one person doing the you and the other trying to own, it gets a little harder because of course, you know, then you want to get on the defensive. But again, we're very fortunate that that was not part of our repertoire of how we engage or ever really fought, I think. And I think it keeps it healthy.
And one thing that recently I completed Landmark Forum. Probably March, and then Eliza just recently completed it. My biggest takeaway from that weekend of time I spent was we don't create stories. And we do this in all aspects of our life, our personal life, our professional life. You know, we create a story about the other person on a professional level. You reach out to a client and they don't call you back. We create a story that client is upset with you, right? Oh my God, like they're so mad at me. And then 2 days later, they call you back. Yeah, I was in the hospital, or I had this going on.
Or I have a million emails and it wasn't a top priority to respond.
Exactly. And we spent 2 days stressing over the fact that they hate us, you know, and then we just create the story. Or we create a story that, my team leader doesn't care about me because they haven't reached out to me. That's a story we created with ourselves.
Right.
And then you gotta say, hey, I need this and I need you to acknowledge this. And then, you know, once again, you can test that. But that creating a story, that concept of creating a story is so powerful. And this is the leadership up and down the chain of command, because often we do it above, right? We often create the story above
that to your team, because I mean, and that is like so important. So often, you know, anybody who works for somebody else, constantly we're making up those stories, right? And I know Landmark was a huge thing, but like, do you guys coach your team and your teammates on that? And what does that look like leadership wise?
Yeah, and I can comment. I mean, I've messed up a lot in my life, you know, even running a team, in the sense of like learn a lot. Yeah. And where I don't realize like there's strife going on within the team until it was like brought to me, or it's slapped me in the face in some way, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's just a constant reminder to do a check-in.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you feeling? Is this okay? Are you okay? Is this, you know, what do you feel about this? And I think I call it a concept of opening the door. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, my job as a leader is to open the door. Mm-hmm. It's the job of the team member or the employee or whoever it might be to come through the door. We both play a role in this. Yeah. If I'm opening the door and they don't choose to walk in, at the end of the day, I've done my responsibility ends with the door open. I'm not responsible for interpreting, drawing out, you know, sussing out what their emotions are, their thoughts are. It's both adults play a responsibility there, but it is my job as a leader to make sure the door opens, right? If you're a leader and that door is closed and it's felt like it's closed, once again, that's where really.
So do you have systems on your team around that? Because that all sounds great. We can all talk about the concept is great. What's the implementation of that? Like, do you have a reminder on your phone every morning to say, you know, hey, just check in, how are you today? No, seriously, because like I used to forget to say hello to people in the morning because I'm a high D. So I literally had to put that on my to-do list.
Yeah.
We're both pretty people person oriented that I think there's an element, you know, I wouldn't forget that probably, but I'd say something that, you know, I'm still learning and growing through, and we did do this in some ways, but, you know, kind of having a regular meeting check-in, right? So as a team, we meet on a monthly basis. And then last year we were doing kind of monthly individual meetings, not always with myself. Liz would do most of them. I would maybe do it quarterly. We weren't totally tight on that, but I think that kind of a structure, some sort of a rhythm is a good place to start. Just because it does give that opportunity of not too much time going, where you can take a minute, you know, 30 minutes aside to just have a chance to, is there something that's coming up, or, you know, how are things going? And certainly on the leader side, you know, we can see the numbers, right? But that's not the whole story. It might be an indication of some story, but it's certainly not the entire picture. So having a chance to connect there. And again, I'm still learning and kind of growing in that area. I haven't totally found the right
rhythm
for our new world of, what the team is now.
And I would say
you did that in the past.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. The key thing for any leader out there is consistency.
Yes.
That is the critical component that people underneath you want to see is consistency. So if you are having team meetings and you do one team meeting a month and then you do individuals each month, when you cancel, reschedule, ignore, show up late, are on your phone, during whatever it might be, that's where that door gets shut. So the technique you can use is, number one, you got to check in and make sure you're being consistent, right? So your consistency will build the initial opportunity to open the door. And then the second opportunity is making sure you're honoring that time, right? That is the most important time. And when you're a leader, you guys know this, that you will have, I call it like the octopus that's always pulling at you, right? There's always 8 tentacles that are going to be pulling at you. And your job when you have that meeting, there's nothing more important in that moment than that team member, that agent, that employee, whoever it might be that you're dealing with. They have to feel that that's important, and that has to be authentic. If it's fake, then that's where the door gets closed.
And that's something, it's so funny that this hasn't like come up in our other conversations, but it's something that we hear so often, like the shotgun leader, the person that's second command, whether it's an operations person or like a sales manager, the head of everything will cancel on them all the time. And most of the time it's not coming from a bad place. It's coming from we're okay, we're good, we're running in the same direction, but it's misinterpreted, which we've been talking about a lot. So I'm excited that we're going in that direction.
We create stories.
Right.
We create a story that, so-and-so doesn't care about me because they canceled. And in the leader's mind, they're like, hey, there's no issue. I got these other issues. Yeah, you're doing so great. Like,
I'm gonna handle that one.
Yeah, right. You're good. I'm gonna go handle this bullshit going on over here.
Right.
So it's one of these things that's like in both directions, and both parties need to say, hey, this is important. And where I learned a lot was when I would cancel, things along those lines. And this is a constant evaluation, right, with growth. So now, and when I started at Compass, I would do my one-on-one meetings with all my principal agents, and it was scattered throughout the entire month. Now I'm moving it into the second week of the month. All I'm doing is one-on-ones, coaching. That's it. So that entire week, no trainings, no, recruiting meetings. All I'm doing is helping my agents, and then that's my honor time. And then in addition, I'm launching a specialized mastermind session at the end of the month. So I have lots of opportunities. And then I have a collaboration meeting every Thursday. So I'm trying to create hacks, so to speak, or structures, that agents know, hey, if they need me in an emergency, it's a phone call away. I'm there. I'm one of the best persons in an emergency, I would say. I'm very good in emergency situations because of my calmness, positivity. I'm gonna work it out.
Everything's gonna be good.
Everything's gonna be good.
We got it. Well, we can sew your head back on, no problem.
Yeah, but I got to make sure, and because I think we're all very high energy, just running really hard, it's very, very easy to get away from structure. So you have to force structure within your day, not your whole day, but troubleshoot. Make sure. Hey, I've been. My shotgun one-on-ones where it's like spread throughout the month gets messed up because inevitably I travel to teach, or I have a cancellation, or I have a recruiting appointment pops in, or, there's an emergency. So now if I can say the second week of the month,
right,
and all I'm doing is one-on-ones, that creates consistency within my schedule, but also with my agents that I'm helping out as well.
I think those meetings are probably the simplest tip that everyone says is important and no one does.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens is the leader, it becomes a one-way meeting when these meetings actually should be a two-way meeting. So the leader's thinking, I don't need anything. Everything's good. You're good, right? I'm going my way. And the shotgun leader's thinking, but I have all these things I need from you, and now I'm not getting them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and something that was cool a little while ago, Eliza, you were talking about, being his advisor in a lot of things, right? You saw that as your your role. And, you know, I think a lot of times it's hard for us to see that ourselves that way too, right? When we're coming alongside of a leader like Skye, who's got multiple things, and we interview a lot of people that have multiple businesses and they're in multiple lanes, right? And they are going a million miles a minute. You know, when you see yourself as an advisor, like, how do you get time from him if you really need it? Like, what does that look like? Is there a process for you to get it? And then how do you guys come together to schedule it?
Yeah.
That's the beauty of family. I was just telling my team, I was like, well, the good news is Thanksgiving is coming up and I'm going to have some time with Skye. Right. You know, I think again, maybe a privilege I have of that is like, if I really need that, I know that I can ask for it and be like, we have got to talk. Like, I need time. And sometimes it might be 9 p.m. at night, you know, just great. I have no problem with that hour. It's not 5 a.m. I'll say that.
Full disclosure, Eliza was an original 5 a.m.
I was in the first couple rounds of it. Yes.
Yeah, she hated every moment of it.
No, that's not true. It's not true. I just didn't have the need to start quite that early.
Yeah.
So I think that I have the ability to like kind of make it clear of like, we need to talk about this and we have to figure out time. And then it's like, okay, like, what have you got? Like, where can I squeeze into your calendar? And then
what's the advice to people if they can't, like, you know, if for some reason they don't feel like they can like push? And, you know, a lot of times I know Christy and I'll tell people like, just stick yourself on the calendar. And that's when they bypass it, right? It's like, well, I have other things. But like, what's your advice to somebody to raise their hand? Because it's important. That time together is important.
Yeah. And I think kind of in this vein of the like regular touching base, I mean, we're working together and we're no longer working together as tightly as we had, right? Since we've come to Compass, but I think making sure that it's not going too long so that you're not just talking when there's a fire, right? Like ideally you're trying to head off the fire. And so making sure that you're speaking up and getting enough time in advance of something really becoming an issue. I mean, I think some of it comes back to like having the confidence that like what you need to talk about or address is important. And yes, there's all these other important things, but remembering that like what I need to talk to you about is also important and I'm going to advocate and like hold for that.
Yeah. And I think as from a team leader perspective, you want to really recognize that little things become big things. Mm-hmm. And if you can solve little things early, it avoids big problems later. And often, you know, when you're running hard, if it's little, you'll often just bypass it because you're like, oh, that's a little problem. I got these big problems over here. But if you can solve little problems, it really allows you to avoid big problems down the road. Yeah. So, because little problems become big ones.
Yeah, I always tell people, even like with listing, you know, if you're talking about your businesses, like being proactive, even with customers, instead of having to be reactive all the time, it's the same thing with leadership, right?
Yeah. Answer the questions before they're asked, right? Yeah. You do that and you're going to be in good shape.
So how do you guys stay on the proactive side of leadership? Whether that's strategy for building your business, strategy for all the changes that are happening in the real estate market and technology and all that stuff. How do you make sure that you're proactive versus reactive as a leadership team?
I can probably take this one. I would say collaboration is a primary thing. One of our, as I said before, the greatest thing at Compass is the fact that every team leader is vested in the success of the other team leaders. And we collaborate. Lindsay, you witnessed that the other day. We collaborate better than I would say any organization that I've ever been a part of. People need a team contract. Hey, does everyone have this? Hey, here's mine. Here's what I do. Hey, I'm struggling with how to handle this issue. You know, you have 5, 6, 10 people piling on. And I think that's the biggest lesson I could give out there is create structures, you know, from a macro level, like big organizational collaboration, but then smaller collaboration groups where you have 2 to 3 trusted accountability partners, for lack of a better word, that are in this mindset. And that's what I'm actually in the process of creating for 2020, where it's going to be basically tiered groups all meeting at the same time once a month. Then you have to elect into it. You can't just say, oh, like I'll pop in, pop out. Like, no, I'm going to commit to this. And the goal is going to be to create these mini collaboration groups of support where people are sharing best practices, struggles, challenges. A lot of it is going to be self-led, and this is where we can sort of take this concept of collaboration and expand upon it, because the old world of real estate or business, in my opinion, where it's everything is segmented. I'm going to go in my office, close my door, and not work together with the other people in my office or my company or my industry. That world is, in my opinion, a path to destruction.
Yes.
And we need to come together as an industry, first off, and elevate it as a company, and elevate it as a team, and elevate, and as an individual, and elevate. And if we don't, and this applies to every business out there, this modern world of technology will run you over.
Yeah. Yep. So, walk us through changing direction just a little bit, but what happened in your business with Eliza? How did you know she was ready to kind of step into the shoes of some leadership there, more than what, I know she had it and she grew within the business. It's been 6.5 years, but what really was like, yes, she can do this. I can see her doing this now.
So Eliza's always been a leader, in my opinion. I think the biggest person she needs to get into that is herself. And as far as our team goes, our team is a team of leaders.
Yeah.
Our team is filled with people who are unbelievable professionals. And so in some ways, our team wasn't this team where you needed to have this person say directing heavy. Our team, it's more of like a sort of a collective group of people with Eliza and Liz really managing it and guiding it in many ways. But every person is a functioning leader within that team. And I'm really proud of that group of women who has assembled and really crushed.
So when you were growing that group of leaders, what were you looking for, and what made you know, oh, that person should be on my team, that person should be on my team? How did you know they were leaders?
We made some mistakes here and there, but no, overall, from an evaluation perspective, what I always started with was culture. I always started, Real Estate with Heart started as an organization and is an organization with a big why, caring about people. So if you came into our structure and you didn't really care about people, it probably wasn't the right structure for you. So every person that's on our team now, they start and end with caring about people. So I think if you're creating an organization, it has to start, it has to end with that word culture, but it can't be a fake culture. It has to be a real culture, right? It has to be a culture that you believe in, live in, and would, sort of breathe.
I would add, I feel like you also looked for and found people that were committed or had some kind of a drive on their own, right? Like you wanted someone that was interested in creating their own business. And one of the changes we made pretty early on, because even though we've had Real Estate with Heart tagline, we actually were Skye, Michiels and Associates when I first started. And then quickly, again, I think to your
checking
your ego. I thought this was great. I've we changed it to Real Estate with Heart, and you have part of the way we're structured is your design of, we all created our own individual businesses. So, if you were someone that didn't want to have your own business, you didn't have the drive to create your own, sort of network and database and leads, that we weren't really the right team, because you weren't trying to create a bunch of people that you were feeding. You were creating a lot of strong business people to run their own businesses under the Real Estate with Heart umbrella in many ways.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Independence, so that was a key factor. Our team was not, we were not a lead distribution team where there's tons of leads. It was our value propositions have been and are now, support within admin structure at a high level, culture, and then leadership, frankly, the group leadership. So.
Love it.
Well, so walk us through, I want to take 2 seconds for you to talk through the sleepout.org that we've posted, because I want people to know what that is instead of it just.
Tell us what you did last night, Skye.
So Debbie McCabe, who's the manager at Berkshire, organized a group of realtors, which included Ken Enoch and Katie McGlade, also from Compass, and then a bunch of Berkshire agents. And there was also an EXP team there. And basically we slept on the street to raise money for an organization called Covenant House. And Covenant House is a homeless shelter for youth in the city of Philadelphia. It's actually around the country, and I think maybe even international as well. But we raise money for our local chapter in Philadelphia. They have a shelter that has currently 72 beds and there's a variety of services they offer, from basic outreach, emergency services, housing, short-term to long-term housing, education, career training, development. And last night, I think it was the executive version of the Sleep Out. And I don't know, last tally I saw was around $530,000 we raised. And obviously we're trying to raise more. And when you hear the story that impacted me the most was a story about a child who was brought over from Africa, who, her family sent her over to her uncle, who said, I'll take care of her, make sure she, gets education and job. And she came over with that dream, and she worked 10 hours a day braiding hair, and at night was forced into prostitution by her uncle. And she ran away, was homeless, and luckily ended up at the Covenant House. And subsequently now is an adult now. But she told the story of this that it impacted me, to the nth degree, to think of the people. Often, most of the people that are homeless or that are in human trafficking. They're in human trafficking, not from people they don't know, but from people they do know in some way. So hearing the stories about the human trafficking element, we think of slavery as something that happened in the 1860s and, in our history, but that's happening today. And
right.
A lot of the homeless youth are victims of human trafficking. That to me, when it was really ingesting a lot of that message, it really impacted me on a personal level. Which I wanted to give back. So anyways, if anyone wants to donate, I think, Lindsay, you're going to be putting up the link. We appreciate that tremendously. And then in addition, if anyone is interested in getting involved in the organization, let me know. I can make some connections as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I've been so really impacted by all the people who have come on our podcast, and everyone who's come on has like their heart place. And I think that is such an important part of leadership, is taking the success and the influence that we build, whether that's on our real estate teams or all the different entrepreneurial businesses we have, and then using those to impact positively those in the community. So thank you for being a leader in that as well. I think that's really cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that
so much. Well, so let's do this. Let's end on, I know you guys have done some really, really great things together as a leadership team, but if you had to, say one or two things that were like, gosh, we did this and we did it so well and we delivered on this and it was awesome, what do you think those things would be?
Oh, gosh.
God.
I know.
You didn't prep us.
Maybe I can't decide which one to say.
You did right.
We're
Yes,
ultra self-critical.
It's true.
Because I love the open door thing, and I love a lot of things that you're doing. And I think, at the end of the day, you guys have done some really cool things together as a leadership team. Yeah. But I'd love to just help people see what you've done.
I would argue the successful entrepreneurs that exist on to begin with, Real Estate with Heart, but then B, the entrepreneurs that I've been able to help over the last 15 months here at Compass, here locally in Philadelphia, but also, I've started interacting with a lot of people nationally. For me, that probably is my proudest thing that I've accomplished as a business person and as a leader. When I look at people like Galit or Bria or Carrie, these really successful entrepreneurs who have built businesses that they're very proud of. Do you know what I mean? And then I'm very proud of them as well. So for me, that's probably my biggest, when I step back and say, okay, I had impact, and then really seeing the growth of a lot of the teams here at Compass and really flourishing under the support that we provide, the technology, the programs, then hopefully a little bit of leadership I'm providing as well.
Yeah, so. No, of course. Yeah, and I think I come back to the culture, which is also kind of a very Compass thing to say, but really we had and have a strong team dynamic, and we went through transition and losing Skye as our leader, and me kind of evolving into this other role. And if we didn't if we didn't have the strong culture and relationships among the entire team, I don't think we would have weathered it and had such a successful year. I'm really proud of the entire team, and that we're closing our year, over $70 million is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would have been possible if we hadn't had the culture of, respect and support and safe space to voice opinion. I mean, not all the conversations were easy and fun, right? But that's part of it, that people could show up for real, and that we could continue to show up and continue to work together and know that we're all committed ultimately in the success of this structure that, we all thrive underneath and create together.
Awesome. Do you guys want to tell us how we can get in touch with you if people want to follow up with questions?
Sure.
For me, it's Facebook isn't good anymore because.
So email for me, I would say Eliza at Compass, ELIZA at compass.com.
Probably the same for me, Skye, SKYE at compass.com as well. We're valuing the best two ways.
I am on Facebook. Don't message me on it. You can, maybe you can post something, but
Instagram is Skye.Michiels. That's a good place to follow me. If we can help anyone, I mean, my drive right now is helping people. So
yeah. And thank you so much. Honestly, this has just been such a privilege and honor to be invited to sit here and to meet with us. So thank you for the chance to do this.
Tremendous respect for what you two do and what you mean for our industry as well.
Thank you. Well, we're very thankful and we appreciate you. And I'm sure that people are going to be reaching out because there were so many great nuggets and so many good things. And I'm going to use the you gun all the time. I love it. So we appreciate you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, guys. Bye.